Kesubos Daf Beis contains 3 sugyas, a brief sugya, conclusion of our last discussion, and then a Mishnah which introduces 2 new sugyas. So the first sugya is going to be if you have a Beis Din sitting together to establish the validity of a contract, and then one of the people sitting there dies and doesn't get a chance to sign, how do you write the shtar in a way which is truth, yet establishes that it is really valid? Then we'll get to the Mishnah, which introduces the concept of Pesha Asar Hua Pesha Hitir as far as it establishing the eligibility of a woman for marriage. Is she trusted to say she's marriageable if she was the Pesha Asar to say that she formerly was not trusted? And the third sugya will be if you have 2 sets of contradicting witnesses discussing the eligibility of a woman for marriage. Who do we believe? Familiar sugya which we've touched on in Maseches Yevamos. So let's begin. The Gemara is in the middle of discussing how you establish the validity of a shtar. You have to verify the signatures. As we said, you have a Beis Din, a group of 3 people get together, they investigate, and they establish the validity of the signed witnesses. And then they write at the bottom of the document that we sat together as a group of 3, we were a court, and we did the research, we established and verified the shtar, and we are signing our names, the 3 judges here. Says the Gemara, what happens if you did all that, but you didn't get a chance to have all 3 of the judges actually sign until one of them died? Now, you had a proper Beis Din, it was properly verified, but you can no longer write the shtar with 3 signatures. People are going to look at it, they're going to see only 2 signatures, they're not going to know what's going on over here, they'll think it's an invalid verification. So the Gemara discusses 3 ways to write the note at the bottom of the shtar. Reb Zera says, I learned his lacha from Rabbi Abba, and it was reminded to me by Rabbi Abba of Akko. You should write it as follows. You should say that we sat together as a group of 3, and 1 is not here anymore. So you could write it clearly exactly what happened, and people understand there was a group of 3 as the Beis Din, and then 1 died. Says the Gemara, why can't you just write that we were a Beis Din? We sat together as a Beis Din. People will say, hey, it says it was a Beis Din. It must be that it was really a Beis Din. And one of them couldn't sign, whatever the reason was. That should be enough information. So the Gemara says, no, that's not necessarily true, because people might think it was a Beis Din of 2. There is such a concept as a Beis Din of 2. The Gemara says that Shmuel had such a thing. He said that it's called a Beis Din Chotzuf. It's considered to be a brazen court, but its actions count. And people may think it's a brazen court, and there was only 2 people there, and they're not necessarily going to want to trust that. So the Gemara says you can't therefore do that. The Gemara discusses, what if you said it was the Beis Din of the Gadol Hadar? And the one who said this was Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. In his town was Machasi. At that time, the Gadol Hadar was Rav Ashi. So he said, what if it was the Beis Din of Rav Ashi? The Gemara says, no, that's still not enough, because the fact that it was the Beis Din of Rav Ashi doesn't prove that it was not a court under his auspices who decided to act with only 2 people on their own. The Gemara says, if though you write that Rav Ashi, or whoever the Gadol was, told us, he gave us the instructions to verify this shtar, then you could assume that it was done correctly with 3 people and not a Beis Din Chotzuf, and that will be enough to verify the shtar correctly. We're now up to the Mishnah, which discusses our next sugya, which has the concept of Pesha Asar Hua Pesha Hitir apply to the establishing the eligibility of a woman for marriage. So the Gemara, let's first do the Gemara that comes after the Mishnah, which actually chooses this location to give us the source of the concept of Pesha Asar Hua Pesha Hitir. Let's remind ourselves that means that if you have a situation where the only concern is established by someone saying it himself, in our case it would be if a woman, for example, says that she was married or she was taken captive or something, now we have reason to be concerned that she's still married or that she was nisanes and therefore she can't marry Kohanim, but that she's the only one who establishes that reality, so we trust her when she says that it's no longer a problem, either because she says she was divorced or she says she was captured but she was not nisanes. Whatever it is, she's the one who said the entire concern. Without her testimony that a concern exists, we wouldn't have any. Then she should be believed to say that there is no actual concern because it was taken care of for whatever the reason is. So the Gemara says, where is there a source for this halacha of Pesha Asar Hu Pesha Hitir? So the Gemara says you could derive it from the pasuk and the sugya of Motzi Shemra. Motzi Shemra is a parsha in the Torah where a man accuses his wife of not being a psula before she was married to him. And her father comes to court to defend her and say that he's lying. So he says as follows. He says, I gave my daughter to this man as a wife, and he hated her. And then he goes on to explain what happened. Now, in the pasuk here, what we need is that he says, says the Gemara, stop there, that at that moment, if you just listen to those words, she's ushered everybody because he said that she's married. did not define who. There is no heter for her to anyone. Then he says Leish Hazeh, he's saying, there is only an issue to everybody besides this man. To this man she's mutter. So he's creating the status of her being married, and he's saying that she's therefore also to everyone. But he is also believed to go further and to say that she's mutter to this person by saying that it's Leish Hazeh. So says the Gemara, there you see the concept of Pesha Asar is also Pesha Hitir. So the Gemara says, first of all, I don't need a source for that, because it's logical. If the only way we know that there's a problem here is because he said so, we should also, if we're trusting him to create the problem, we must trust him to create the solution. Says the Gemara then, so what is the pasuk for? So the Gemara answers, this pasuk is teaching me something completely different. It's teaching me two things. When it says, it's biti nesati le'ish, so that is telling me that a man has believed to say that his daughter is married and she's usher to anyone. And the reason he's believed is because he could be mekabel kiddushin for her. He could marry her off if she's a ketana. And since he could have married her off, and it could marry her off if she's still a ketana, he's believed to say that she is married. Because it's biyado, it's within his power to make it happen, he's believed to say that it happened. Now the word hazeh is to tell me that's specific to this discussion of Moitzi Shemra. That's telling me that the whole concept of Moitzi Shemra only applies to a woman's husband. It does not apply to her Yavam. So if let's say she's married and she never does be with her first husband and she falls to Yibum, and then the Yavam says, she's not a psula. So he has no right to do that. The entire concept of Moitzi Shemra, that he can go to court and that there's a fine against him if he makes this accusation falsely, that entire sugya only applies to our first husband, the one that she's marrying, and not his brother. He cannot make a claim against the kiddushin of his brother if he's just a Yavam. Alright, now let's see our Mishnah and the Gemara which follows. We'll have 4 cases of Pesha Asar as far as it applies to a woman. So we have the first 2 are in the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, what happens if a woman says, I was an Eshes Ish, I was married, but I'm now divorced. Or she says, I was captured, but I was not Nisanis, I wasn't raped, and therefore I'm mutter to Kohanim. So if the only way we know this information is based on her Pesha Asar, Pesha Hitir, we believe her when she says that she's divorced and that she was not Nisanis, and she's mutter to Kohanim. If we have a source from some other way, if we have witnesses that said she was married at some point, or witnesses that said she was captured at some point, then she no longer has nemanis. We cannot believe her. She doesn't have the power of Pesha Asar. We don't believe her when she says she's divorced. We don't believe her when she says she was not Nasanis. She's also to marry anybody else if she was married, and she's also to Kohanim if she was taken captive. Says the Gemara, what happens if the witnesses showed up after she was married? So she had the power of Pesha Asar. She's the one who said she was married but divorced. She's the one who said she was captured but not Nisanis. We allowed her to remarry. The first case we allowed her to marry somebody. The second case we allowed her to marry a Kohen. And then another pair of witnesses came and established the original concern. They said that she was married once, and we don't know anything about a divorce. Or they said she was captured. We don't know anything about whether she's Nisanis or not. She no longer has the Pesha Asar. So the Mishnah says, without saying which case is going on, the Mishnah says she doesn't have to get divorced from her husband. The Mishnah doesn't clarify which case in the Mishnah we're saying this halacha. The Gemara will discuss it on a different daf, not on our daf. Now, the Gemara moves on to another case. The Gemara says, what happens if she's the one who says that she was married, but now she says, I'm single. And she doesn't say, I got divorced, therefore I'm single. She just she contradicts her original testimony. Originally she said she's married, now she says she is single. She doesn't say that she was divorced. The implication is that she was never married. She's contradicting what she said. So the Gemara quotes a brisa that says that you have Shavi Nafshi Chaticha de Isur. Once she said that she is usher to the rest of the world because she's married, so that's it. She created a status of Isur. She can't get out of it. So the Gemara says, but you could... actually, the Brisa says she is believed, and the Gemara asks, what about Shavi Nafshi Chaticha de Isur? The Gemara answers is that it depends if she has a valid excuse for why she said before that she's married and now she's saying she's not. So the Gemara gives an example. The Gemara says there was a story about a woman who was very beautiful and everybody wanted to marry her and she needed to get rid of them, so she told them all she's married. And then later she married someone. So the Chachamim asked her, what are you doing? I thought you said you were married. Are you going and marrying somebody? So she said, no, all the people came to marry me were not appropriate. They were not huganim. They were not befitting for a marriage. So therefore, in order to get rid of them, I said I was married. Now I found somebody who is appropriate, so therefore I'm marrying him. And the Gemara said that they accepted that halacha. That was halacha that came from Rav Acha, Sar Habira. He said over in front of the Chachamim in Usha, and they established a rule. If she has a good explanation for why she said something which she's now claiming is false, then we'll accept it and we'll go with her current status now. Says the Gemara, fourth case. What if she said she was married already? She said to her husband she's Tameya. She said she's a Nida. Then she comes back and she says, no, I was lying. I'm not a Nida. Do we believe her now to change her status, or does she have to have she have to go to the mikveh first? So the Gemara says that the Rav answered Shmuel, who asked that if she has a valid excuse and explanation, then she is believed. The Gemara comments that even though Rav told Shmuel that it was okay, you can trust a woman even if she contradicts herself, as long as she has a good excuse, a good explanation for why she said she was Nida. But it happened to Shmuel. His wife told him that she was Nida, and then she said she's not, and she gave a good excuse, but Shmuel didn't accept it. Shmuel did not trust it until she went to the mikveh. Alright, now the Gemara moves on to the next sugya, which is what happens if you have conflicting witnesses testifying about the status of a woman. So we're going to talk about what happened. So the first two cases which we will discuss will be if they said that she was married and one said she was divorced. One case is where the witnesses, one pair said she was divorced and one pair said she was not divorced. And the second case is one pair said that her husband had died and the other one said her husband did not die. So the Brisa discusses these two cases, and the Brisa says we can all agree she should not go ahead and get remarried. You have two Edom saying she's married and two Edom saying that she's either a grusha or an almana. She cannot lechatchila go and remarry. Says the Gemara that if she does go remarry and then a second pair of Edom come and say that she's not allowed to, that means what happened was as follows. She had one pair of Edom that came and said she was divorced, or a pair of Edom that came and said that her husband had died. Then she went and she remarried based on that. Then the conflicting Edom came and said that no, she was not allowed to marry this person. So everybody agrees she does not have to get divorced from her husband, because you have 2 against 2. You don't have any reason to go either way. She's now currently married. She doesn't have to leave her husband. However, if you have 2 pairs of Edom with conflicting reports came, and we told her you can't get remarried. She went and she got remarried anyway. Now we have a machlokes, can she stay married to the guy or not? And Tanna Kama says she can. I mean, Menachem Rabbi Yossi says she cannot. She's not allowed to. Now, the Gemara asks, why, if it's 2 against 2, do we say that she's allowed to stay married? According to the Chachamim, we say she's allowed to stay. How is she allowed to stay married? You have 2 against 2. The halacha is that if you have conflicting Edom, conflicting realities as to whether she's mutter to get married or not, she's in a safek iser kares all the time. She should have to bring a carbon asham taloi. How could she stay married if she's in a case where she has to bring asham taloi because she may be doing iser b'safek? For sure, she has to get divorced from the guy and then bring the carbon. How can we say she could stay? So the Gemara says no. An asham tali only has to be brought in a situation where the person themselves doesn't know if they're doing an isser or not. Here, the man is one of the witnesses. The man she married is one of the witnesses who said she knows that she's either divorced or an almana. So he's sure. So therefore, he doesn't have to bring an asham tali. The Gemara says, what about her? The Gemara says, we're talking about where she also says she knows. She knows her husband died. She knows she's divorced. She therefore doesn't have to bring an asham tali either. Now, the Gemara says that Rabbi Yochanan brings these 2 cases, and he paskins a split decision. He says there's a difference between whether the discussion is whether she's divorced or whether the discussion is whether or not her husband had died. In the case where the discussion is whether or not she's divorced, so there, if she got remarried, and she wasn't supposed to, but she got remarried, then the halacha is that she has to get separated. She has to get divorced from him, like Rabbi Menachem ben Rabbi Yossi. If, however, the discussion is whether or not her husband had died, and then the 2 come and say that he was alive, then it's 2 against 2. We don't say that there's any problem. There she wasn't supposed to get remarried, but there she could. So again, if the discussion is divorce, then she has to leave her second husband. If the discussion is death of the first husband, she can stay. So the Gemara, how did Rabbi Yochanan come up with this split decision? So the Gemara gives 3 explanations as to what his reasoning was. Abaye says we're not talking about where it's 2 against 2. We're talking about where it's 1 against 1. The halacha is that one single aid has a special namanas to say that a woman's husband had died. Chazal gave a special trust in order to prevent her from becoming an aguna. We believe one aid that says that he died. This is an extensive sugya which we saw at length in Maseches Yevamos. Therefore, the one aid who comes and says that her husband had died is believed like 2. The one aid that says that no, her husband is still alive does not have any special nemanis. There was no special power given to one aid who's saying that. Therefore, it's 2 against 1, and therefore the one who said that her husband had died is believed. Says the Gemara, then why can she not lechatchila go remarry? So Gemara says that's because you want to avoid problems. We have a pasuk quoted by Rav Asi, Haser Mimcha, Akshas Pev Alazis Vasayim Harchek Mimeka. You want to make sure you stay away from causing people to talk about bad things that you did. You should not have their mouths or tongues twisted against you. So don't put yourself in a sticky situation. You have conflicting aid and 1 against 1 as to whether or not you're allowed to get married. Don't get married. However, if she did, because we're trusting the one who says that her husband had died more than the one who said that he's alive, she's allowed to get married. Now that's all about if he died. However, Rabbi Yechon doesn't paskin that way if there's a husband who says that she got divorced, because there is no special trust for a man who comes and says that she's divorced. There was never any special power given to that aid. So what you have is 1 against 1. Both of them agree that she was married. So you just have 1 aid saying that she was divorced, 2 aid them saying she's married. So we've definitely established the fact that she was married. 1 that says that she was divorced, there's no pesha asar, and he's not neman, and therefore he's not trusted, and that's why if she went and got remarried, she has to leave him, she has to get divorced from him. This is Abaya's explanation. Rava's explanation is no, we're talking about where there was 2 against 2. The difference is as follows. If her husband were to walk back in and show up, so then in the case where she said that she had gotten remarried based on the witnesses who testified that he died, she's obviously wrong. She's obviously messed up now. And she's going to have to deal with all kinds of situations of being married as an Eshes Ish to somebody else. Therefore, she's going to make sure that that doesn't happen. And we therefore trust that she herself did a lot of research to make sure that he really was dead and he's not going to show up. That's why if she gets remarried, we let her stay. We trust the research that she did to make sure she doesn't get into that sticky scenario. If, however, she just got remarried based on an aid that said, or 2 aid that said she was divorced, and then her husband shows up, that's not going to prove anything. Her husband will come and say, hey, I never divorced you. She'll say, yes, you did. And therefore, she's not going to be messed up. She'll stick to her story. So the Gemara says, hold on a second. Don't we know that a woman is not so brazen as to tell her husband to his face that she's divorced, even if he's not? So how could you say that if he shows up, she'll just deny it and she'll say, no, she's divorced? There's no such, she can't have that much azos. The says, no, she can. Remember, she has witnesses supporting her. When she has witnesses supporting her that she's divorced, then she can go and have azos, even if it's not true. So therefore, she could potentially get remarried, even if she doesn't trust the Adam that says that she got divorced, or she doesn't have strong support for that. All right. The Gemara's third approach is Rav Asi, and he says that the case is where they're saying it happened today, saying that her husband died today, or she got divorced today. Therefore, if she says her husband died today, we can accept that, because it could be that there's no proof of it. Maybe he died, he drowned in the sea, or he got eaten by an animal, whatever it is, there's no evidence. He's gone. If, however, she got divorced today, now we have a problem. Where's the get? How did she lose the get within 1 day? That's a little bit hard to believe, hard to accept, and therefore we wouldn't necessarily approve of that, and we would not allow her to go to stay with her second husband if she goes and she gets remarried. Says one more pair of cases with a similar contrast. What if you have conflicting witnesses as to whether or not a woman is niskadish, whether or not she's married in the first place? So you don't know what to do. You don't know if she's married or not. So she shouldn't get married. But if she does go ahead and get married to someone else, she shouldn't marry someone else. But if she does marry someone else, she could stay married to him. If, however, you know that she's married, just 2 witnesses agree that she's married, but they argue as to whether or not she's divorced, here we have a brisa that says she should not get remarried, and if she does, she shouldn't marry someone else, but if she does, she has to leave him. She has to get divorced from him. What's the difference? Small offers a few explanations. We're only going to do one because we're already on the next daf. And Bai says the difference is, in the case where there are arguments to whether or not she's ever mikudeshes, so there's no established fact that she was ever mikudeshes at all. You have 1 against 1 if she was ever usher. Therefore, if she gets divorced, if she gets remarried to someone else, she could stay with him. On the other hand, in the case where the argument is whether or not she got divorced, they're both agreeing that she was married. So we've established the fact that she was married. We have a question whether or not she got divorced. That's 2 Adam saying she was married against 1 who's saying she got divorced. You can't go with that, and therefore she has to leave him.